For more than a decade, we've been told that the energy transition is inevitable, affordable, and already cheaper than fossil fuels. We've been told it's simply a matter of political will, and yet something doesn't add up. Europe's biggest oil companies, BP, Shell, Total, once presented as champions of the green transition, are now quietly pulling back. Billions have been invested, projects have been canceled, strategies have been reversed. So what went wrong? To understand this, we need to look at how the transition was designed, how oil companies became involved, and what their retreat tells us about the real limits of the system. First, how we decided to reach net zero. The idea of net zero did not originate in industry. It came from politics. After the oil shocks of the 1970s, governments began talking about alternative energy. But it was climate change, especially from the early 2000s onward, that turned this into a full energy transition. In Europe, the key moment came in 2009 with the EU Renewable Energy Directive. This directive did not merely encourage renewables, it made them mandatory. Member states were given binding targets. Energy producers were required to generate renewable power. Subsidies, quotas, and regulatory constraints followed. The logic was straightforward. If governments forced renewable production, scale would increase, costs would fall, and renewables would become competitive. At first, this seemed to work. The cost of producing electricity from wind and solar dropped sharply. At the point of generation, renewables became cheap, but electricity systems do not run on production costs alone. They run on reliability. Wind and solar are intermittent. When there is no wind or sun, the system still needs power. That means backup generation, storage, grid reinforcement, and redundancy. Those costs are real, and they are not optional. They are passed directly to consumers through electricity bills. So while renewable electricity can be cheap to produce, the system required to support it is not. Second, how European oil companies moved from advocates to skeptics. In the late 1990s, BP rebranded itself as Beyond Petroleum. Its logo became a sunburst. Shell and others followed similar paths. This shift was driven by belief, by pressure, and by strategy. Oil companies faced intense political, media, and ESG pressure. Being seen as green became essential for reputation, regulation, and legal defense. They invested in wind, solar, biofuels, hydrogen, and other low-carbon technologies. These investments helped green their image, but over time, a problem became impossible to ignore. Most renewable investments did not deliver returns comparable to oil and gas. European firms were underperforming their American competitors. Shareholders noticed, pension funds noticed, investors were not interested in symbolism. They wanted profitability. As a result, strategies changed. BP replaced its leadership and refocused on oil and gas. Shell cut renewable spending and prioritized only the most profitable low-carbon projects. Other firms followed quietly. This was not a sudden ideological shift. It was economics reasserting itself. Third, what we can learn from the failures. The lesson is not that renewables are useless. The lesson is that the transition is far more complex, slower, and more expensive than it has been presented. Renewables work, but they do not work alone. They require backup power, often from gas or coal. They require massive grid upgrades. They require storage systems dependent on scarce and environmentally costly materials. And they require public acceptance of large-scale infrastructure. All of this demands sustained investment over decades. Subsidies made this possible, but subsidies have limits. Governments are running out of fiscal room. Voters are pushing back against rising energy costs. At the same time, physics has not changed. After more than 50 years of discussion, wind and solar still represent only a small share of global primary energy. No major economy runs entirely on renewables. No country has solved intermittency at scale without fossil backup. The obstacle is not a lack of political will. It is technical and economic reality. Ignoring that reality does not accelerate the transition. It delays honest solutions. So the real question is not whether renewables are good or bad. The real question is whether an energy transition can be built that works in the real world, not just in policy documents and long-term scenarios. Because if energy policy continues to rely on targets rather than systems, narratives rather than physics, and ideology rather than economics, then the transition will not simply slow down, it will fracture. And the retreat we are seeing today may only be the beginning.